for the content you want to see, including high school sports, college sports, and other great events throughout the year. Subscribe to our streaming service and get access to it all. ISC, local lives here.
Welcome, everyone, to the third episode of the third season of the Bracket Report, a production of Delphi Bracketology. We're sponsored by Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo. I'm your host, Brian Tonsoni. Joining me today is our senior editor, Cade Nelson. If you're interested in all of our work, our website, delphibracketology.com, will have updated seed lists and brackets every Tuesday and Friday. And then you can correspond with us on Twitter. Our handle is @DelphiBrackets. So we start every week with a State of Indiana report, and we got to start with the Purdue Boilermakers, Cade. They continue to impress, continue to be our best team. What do you have on the Boilermakers?
Yeah, for Purdue, as of our last show on Tuesday, they beat both the Michigan teams. They beat Michigan on the road 75-70, and they cleaned up Michigan State at home 77-61. And they're 10-1 at home, 7-0 on the road with the overall record of 21-1. After the 16-point win on Sunday, I think they listened to the show last week because I've always been saying I want them to get a quality Big Ten win where, you know, they create that point separation and they just feel like it's a solid win and there's no going back. So with that win over Michigan State, their net is now number 3, and they're looking really solid.
And the Indiana Hoosiers have also done some work lately here, winning 5 in a row. They're up to number 20 in the net, 3 quad 1 wins, 3 quad 2 wins, overall 500 record in quads 1 and 2 with no losses. They look to continue that this evening when they go on the road against Maryland, and then this weekend with a huge game against the Purdue Boilermakers. But Indiana has moved up our bracket to comfortably in. Other teams that we're watching, we have Indiana State 14-9 overall, 7-5 in their conference, a net of 125. They're going to have to win their conference tournament. And some other teams in the state, Cade.
Yeah, our other teams are Ball State, Butler, and Notre Dame. Ball State's overall record is 14-7. They're 4th in their conference, and they're 5-3 in the month of January. So as of late, not doing terrible. Butler is 11-12 overall. They're 3-9 in the conference. They're 2-6 on the road and second to last in the Big East. So they'd have to make a big upset in the conference tournament to be able to get into the overall bracket. Notre Dame is 10-12 overall, being 2-6 in their last 8 games. They're also 2 games off of being last in the ACC. So another Indiana team that would have to upset in the conference tournament.
Yep, they're going to have to make a run in order to go. We've had some good meetings. We have virtual meetings on Monday nights through like a Zoom call. We meet Tuesday morning, and then we do another podcast on Thursday night. So teams are moving, Cade, moving up and down. We think the top 4 or 5 seed lines are getting somewhat set, but there is a lot of movement. So let's talk about teams that are moving up.
Yeah, my team moving up this week is Northwestern, and I feel like with Northwestern being in the Big Ten, they've kind of been slept on, you know, being in the shadow of Purdue. But they're 3-0 in their last 3 games. And they're 5-2 in their last 7, picking up solid wins over Illinois and Indiana. They're 4-4 in quad 1, so they have a good amount of quad 1 games won. They're 6-5 in quads 1 and 2 combined, with a net of 39. Not sure if that's been improved or not, but even though a 39 net is still very good. They're 6-3 in the conference, which puts them at second, and their next 3 games are against Iowa, Wisconsin, and they play at home against Michigan. So those are some lower-tier Big Ten teams, but those are definitely more opportunities to just get solid wins.
Who would have thought we're talking Rutgers and Northwestern at the top of the Big Ten at this point of the season? But both of those teams are comfortably in. Northwestern still has a little bit of work to do to make sure they make it. Team moving up for me is Baylor. And Baylor gets beat last night by Texas on the road at Texas against a real 2 seed. So Baylor does not fall for us because of last night's loss. But they are moving up. They were a 6 seed, now a 5 seed, moving up probably either a 3 and pushing for a 2 seed if they can get some key wins coming up. But they are 7-6 now in Quad 1 after last night. They have no losses outside of Quad 1. So all of their losses have come against teams that are really, really good basketball teams. And so watch for the Baylor. They've gotten healthy. They're playing good basketball. Just came up, I think, lost by 5 last night to Texas. So Baylor's a team to watch moving up at the top of the seed. But just as there are teams that are moving up, we talk about teams that are moving down. And, Cade, you have an interesting team that's been hard for us to seed most of this season.
Yeah, as of late, Auburn was on the 5 seed line. Now they're down to the 7 or 8 seed line. And they've been bouncing around with how their net looks and just how their overall resume looks. It's not something crazy, but it's not something that will drop them a lot of spots. As of late, they're 31 in the net, 4-3 on the road. They lost a Quad 2 game at home and then lost a Quad 1 opportunity on the road. They lost to Texas A&M at home and West Virginia on the road. So they're no longer 500 in Quads 1, and we have them moving from the 5 seed line to the 7 seed line. But like I said, it's not necessarily their resume that's bad. It's just the teams around them are winning and picking up solid games that just kind of outshine Auburn.
And we'll talk Auburn versus Iowa. In the last 2 meetings, we've had Auburn a 7, then Auburn an 8, then back to a 7, and I think we might have them back to an 8 by the time we publish this evening. So Auburn's on that 7-8 line going forward. For me, the team moving down is the UConn Huskies. At one point was the overall number 1 seed, the best team in the country. You were talking whether Purdue or UConn was the team that was going to be at the top. And now they're down to either the last 4 or maybe the 5 seed line, depending on where we want to put them. They have a net of 7, which means their basketball metrics, their offense and defense has been solid, and that keeps them from falling down the list because they've had some good results early, but they've lost 6 of 8. And so the fall, when you lose 6 of 8, the fall from number 1 to 16 is a huge fall, and they will continue to fall unless they get it turned around. So UConn is a team that is falling for us. We're going to actually share some decision-making. We're going to talk about 3 tough decisions after we come back from the break as we talk about our seeds lines 1 through 4. So stick with us here on the Bracket Report.
Oh, baby! That got me awake!
The worm has turned in Logansport.
Look at that play. The lob underneath, and if you don't get any picture perfect more than that.
That young man will be glad that our cameras were here for tonight's contest.
Your life is on the go. Now your viewing habits can be on the go. With the ISC Sports Network app, your team is at your fingertips. You can download years' worth of content from the ISC Sports Network library. High school, college, special events, weekly and monthly shows, wherever you find your favorite app. And you can always find out more information at iscsportsnetwork.com.
Welcome back to the Bracket Report. I'm Brian Tonsoni. I'm here along with Cade Nelson, and every week we practice what the NCAA committee is going to do those final weeks of the season and picking the 68 teams to play for the national championship. And so we pick teams as if the season ended last night. And so that's sometimes important to know because as games happen this evening, things are going to change for tomorrow. And we put out our brackets every Tuesday and Thursday. But we're going to share a couple seeding discussions with you now. And we just got done talking about Auburn and Iowa. So take us through a comparison of those two as you see it. And which team do you think is higher on our seed list right now, Auburn or Iowa?
Right now, based off of what I'm looking at, I think it's Auburn. Iowa has 5 Quad 1 wins and they're 2-4 on the road, but they have a Quad 4 loss, and Auburn doesn't even have a Quad 3 loss. So the fact that Auburn has been able to, keep a above 500 record in Quads 1 and 2 and stay positive on the road and keep a decent net, I think Auburn is the team to be above. But also looking at wins and quality of wins, that there's an easy case for Iowa to move up.
So I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think Iowa should be number 1. We'll see who wins out. One of these teams is probably going to be on the 7 line in our bracket that comes out tonight. One's going to be on the 8, or maybe both are going to be on the 8. There was a push today in our meeting for New Mexico to move from an 8 to a 7. And we're in constant, conversation with our students, maybe sometimes when they should be doing math or language, but we're in constant texting and things back and forth. But it's Auburn's overall quad 1 and 2 versus the quality, as you said, of Iowa's wins. I believe Iowa has some better wins. Iowa's net moved up from when we first talked on Monday to a 36. They're likely to be in that discussion for a 7. They've beaten Rutgers twice. They've beaten Indiana. So sometimes you got to look at the quality of wins as well as the number of wins. But these two teams are really tight. Auburn had the advantage for quite some time. So now let's look at our top 4 seeds, and in our top 4 seeds, there are some other discussions that we will share with you. The best, our number 1 seeds probably tonight are going to be Purdue, Alabama, Houston, and Kansas. Right? This last line for Kansas has been debate on our Twitter feed. The Tennessee fans think it should be Tennessee. Kansas fans think it should be Kansas, and then some random people will throw out Arizona. Really, Kansas, Tennessee, Arizona, all could be a number 1 seed. I don't think you're wrong in doing that, but let's share with our viewers a little bit of how we try to make that decision.
Yeah. So when I think about this decision between Kansas and Tennessee, and sometimes even Arizona, I like to think about them. When I start out with 1 seed line teams, I look at what sets them apart from everyone else. And for me, Kansas sets themselves apart from Tennessee by having those 8 quad 1 wins. They haven't lost outside of quad 1 either, and they're 4-2 on the road with the hardest schedule in the nation. So I think looking at all those, their basketball metrics might not be as good, but when you come down to just the wins, I think Kansas has the quantity and the quality to be better than Tennessee.
And they've played. Tennessee has beaten Kansas, so we get a lot of arguments. Why don't you just automatically move Tennessee over Kansas because of the head-to-head? The head-to-head is not really a criteria the NCAA committee uses. They may use it if everything is equal. If the NCAA committee thinks Kansas and Tennessee is absolutely equal, then the head-to-head might come into play. But I'm not sure Kansas and Tennessee are equal. They're close. They're very, very close. But Tennessee has 8 quad 1 wins. Tennessee's played 10 games in quad 1 and 2 and lost 3 of those 10. Kansas has won 8. And the one game that Tennessee played Kansas was the 3rd game of the Bahama Classic. I forget the name of the 3-game tournament. It was 3 days in a row, and you don't discount it. Tennessee gets credit for the win, but it's not a normal game where you have a lot of scouting and preparation. So there's a little bit of shade thrown on Tennessee's win in the 3rd game in a row in the battle for the Bahamas, I think is what it was called. But it's hard for me to look at the overall strongest schedule in the country, an 8 net, a road record of 4 wins on the roads, 3 neutral. It's hard for me to bypass that. The recency bias says Kansas isn't very good because they've lost 3 in a row, or 3 out of their last 4 now, because they beat Kentucky on the road. But it is razor thin between Tennessee, I think, and Kansas. And you mentioned Arizona. If you look at their wins, I think their wins are actually better than Houston or Kansas. So we're going to stick with Kansas, and they play tonight. Kansas State, a 3 seed, plays at Kansas, number 1 seed. Kansas State just beat Kansas a week or so ago. So probably while you listen to this, about an hour or 2 later, well, we're going to drop Kansas for Tennessee if they get beat, right? Yeah. It's that close. A loss or a win here or there could change the body of work on our last 1 seed line. So our 2 seed lines as we start this evening are going to be Tennessee and Arizona, which very well could be 1 seeds. We also have UCLA and Texas. Texas gets a huge win last night. That is their 6th quad 1 win. They have no losses in quad 2, 3, and 4. They have solidified, I think, their spot on the number 2 seed line. But let's look at our 3 seed lines, Cade. Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas State, and Xavier, 3 teams from the Big 12. What do you see there that is either surprising or something to watch to alert our viewers?
Surprising to me is Xavier. They're 27 net, and they're 5-2 on the road with 6 quad 1 wins. We talk all the time that Xavier might be this year's Wisconsin. They have solid wins, but that high net is what scares us when moving them up or down. But just the quality of wins that they've been able to get, all the while having that 27 net, it makes it tough for any bracketologist to be able to drop them out when you just look off wins and not the crazy numbers that the committee comes up with. You have to give Xavier their respect.
So what Cade talks about with this year's Wisconsin, we try to identify trends, because what we do is not say what we would do if we were the committee. We're trying to guess what the actual committee does. So we look at the past years, and we look at trends, at how they make the decisions, what stats influenced last year's committee, and that always changes, but we think that helps us try to predict. Last year, Wisconsin had a lot of quad 1 wins. They had a lot of top-level wins. We call them 1A wins, the best of the best kind of wins. But their metrics, their math metrics, their offense and defensive efficiency was not very good. And so we had Wisconsin as a 4 seed because of their metrics, despite their wins, and the committee placed them as a 3. So that tells us that the committee might move a team up if they have really good wins despite their metrics. For us, that's Xavier this year. 5 road wins, 6 quad 1 wins. They do have a quad 3 loss, but we believe Xavier will be on that 3 seed line if they continue to play decent basketball. They got a nice road win at UConn last week. So those are our 3 seed lines. And then rounding out our top 4 seed lines, Gonzaga, Virginia, Marquette, and UConn. We're going to talk about UConn here in a little bit. But a lot of people have Gonzaga and Virginia on the 2 seed line. So there's some stuff that we have to continue to look at. For me, those teams are lacking in the number of wins right now. And Gonzaga is not the Gonzaga of old. But Gonzaga and Virginia goes on the road and beats Syracuse. They pick up a quad 1 win last night. Some people will have them over Xavier or Kansas State, depending on which bracketologist you look at. That's why you should continue to just look at Delphi Bracketology, though. But let's talk UConn. UConn, that formal number 1, they were my team moving down. The tough decision that we have to make is, why are they still a top protected seed line on the 4 seed line versus teams like TCU, St. Mary's, who's won 9 in a row? Why do we still have UConn on that last 4 seed line?
I think the reason we have UConn is just their wins are better than anyone below them, and also their net is single digit. And with Houston last year, when we talk about comparing to what happened in years past, they were kind of like Connecticut too, because they had the single-digit net, not a lot of wins in quad 1. Well, they didn't have
0.
Yeah, they didn't have any.
Houston had
1.
0 wins last year, and the 5th best mathematical formula net in the country, and dropped to a 5 seed.
Mm-hmm. So for Connecticut to have at least those 4 quad 1 wins and still have that single-digit net with wins over Alabama and Iowa State, I don't think that you can drop them any further because that mathematic metrics.
Yeah, you beat a 1 seed. You're the 7th best net team in the country. Yes, you've been on a bad run of 6 through 8. They can't afford to lose 3 or 4 more games and stay at the 4 seed line. But you're looking at a team that's probably at lowest dropping down to a 6 unless they lose a ton of games. But it's tough. Again, the committee has a tough decision because we as fans oftentimes just see what's happened recently, and we forget that UConn was dominant for 14 games. And the committee really looks at that domination for those first 14 games as much as it looks at the 6 of 8 losses. And again, the fall is from number 1 overall to number 16 overall. The committee has taken that into effect. Sometimes the AP or the coaches poll might have these teams drop out because of their recency. Bracketing is a lot different than that. So those are our top 4 protected seeds. You can find that on DelphiBracketology.com. We'll update that this evening before the games, and then we'll update it again on Friday. But stay with us here after the break. We're going to share some Big Ten seedings, some bubble teams that are in or out, and always some games to watch. Stick with us here on the Bracket Report.
For the ultimate Wi-Fi experience, you need a managed Wi-Fi service with advanced Blast Wi-Fi. Blast Wi-Fi systems provide ultimate coverage, ultimate performance, and ultimate power all the time. Available from Mulberry Telecommunications, Blast Wi-Fi systems feature the latest Wi-Fi 6 technology and are equipped with unrivaled bandwidth and 4 times more simultaneous connections so you can connect tons of devices throughout your home with no lag and no downtime. Plus, with 24/7 support and remote troubleshooting, you can rest assured that Mulberry Telecommunications is always here to help you should any issues arise. It's the ultimate Wi-Fi experience, and it's a blast. Blast Wi-Fi is now included with Mulberry Telecommunications fiber internet packages. Contact Mulberry Telecommunications at 296-2885 today to get started.
Ball here. Harris scores. With 19 seconds. Fake players, big boy. I'm telling you right now, that's awesome. I love it. Layup taken, and an and one.
Hi there, I'm Jake Query.
And I'm Derek Schultz.
And we do Query and Schultz on ISC Sports Network. And Derek, unlike Ted Lasso, we have a third season.
That's right. Season number 3 right now, iscsportsnetwork.com. You can see episodes on Comcast 81 as well, Mondays at 7:30. I'm talking about our show, Jake, this beloved show that people tune into every single week. Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, so many ways to watch Query and Schultz every Monday, 7:30. Tune in and hang out with us.
And you don't have to be a goldfish. You'll remember everything we say.
Welcome back. You're watching the Bracket Report, a production of Delphi Bracketology, sponsored by Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo. It's now time for our annual segment of talking about the Big Ten. And the Big Ten right now for us, I think there are 9 teams that we have in. It's going to fluctuate between that 8 or 9. There's some big names on the outskirts. I'll run through them real quick and then ask Kate his thoughts. Purdue's the 1 seed. Rutgers and Indiana are on the 5 seed line. Illinois 6. Iowa is a 7. Michigan State is an 8. We switched Iowa from an 8 to a 7 earlier this morning. Maryland's a 9. Northwestern's a 9. Those teams we think are comfortably in and avoiding anything disastrous have a good chance of making it. Penn State was out until this morning, and then we moved them in. They're an 11 seed for us right now, but you got some names. Your Ohio State Buckeyes, Caden Gasser, another one of our member, his Wisconsin Badgers, and then, I don't know, we'll throw Joey's in the booth over there. Maybe he likes Michigan, but they're on the outside looking in and have a lot of work to do. Your thoughts on the Big Ten?
Yeah, so for the Big Ten, we've talked early on in the season here that it's such a solid conference that any win you get is going to be a solid win. But also, for right now, the water has leveled. And what I mean by that is if you get a loss, it's not necessarily going to be a quad 3 or quad 4 loss. It'll just be maybe a low-tier quad 1 loss, if anything, a quad 2 loss, which when you look at that, it's not a crazy bad thing to see. Obviously, you don't want to get too many of those. But it's not going to hurt you much if you drop 2 games to a Purdue or a Indiana in their hot stretch here.
If you're a fan of the Big Ten, you want to avoid losing streaks. And the Big Ten's been streaky this year. Yeah. You've had Iowa lose a lot early and then turn it around. Indiana lost 3 in a row. Now they've won 5 in a row. You want to balance out. If you lose a game, come back and win 1 or 2, and you'll be okay if you're in one of those top teams. So another thing that we talk about, who's in and who's out. The last 4 in for us right now are Arkansas, Oklahoma, Penn State, and Boise State. We moved Penn State in for Nevada. That's real tight, real tight. And then our first 4 out would be Nevada, Texas A&M, Arizona State, and Virginia Tech. We had a conversation last night, Kate, about trying to identify a team that is outside that might surprise. Rutgers last year came out of nowhere. They had huge wins, but a horrible net of 77, and they got in. So we were spent trying to find some teams this week that are on the outside looking in that could surprise us. Is there any talk here on the bubble of who our viewers should be watching as maybe teams that can bounce their way into our bracket?
Yeah, for me, a team that could bounce their way in, I think, is Arizona State. We've talked in meetings about Texas A&M also having a good resume to be in, but Arizona State has beat Creighton, which is a top quality quad 1 win. They're 4-4 on the road, and they're 500 in quads 1 and 2. So we also talked that Arizona State might be this year's Rutgers of last year, having that good amount of quad 1 wins, but not a great net. So I think if Arizona State continues to win, all the while having a quad 4 loss and a 64 net, they have a decent strength of schedule. I think if they pick up a road win and maybe a couple more quad 1 wins, that they'll be in.
The key, if your team is on the bubble, is to win. You want to win more than you lose from this point going forward. But remember the body of work. We talked about that last week on last week's show. What we do is we compare teams. A win adds to their resume, then we compare resume. A win doesn't mean you automatically go in. A loss doesn't mean you automatically go down. It could mean movement, but like Baylor doesn't move after a loss last night because their body of work is strong enough to stay where they're at. Iowa State doesn't fall last night because of their loss. It wasn't a bad loss. As you talk about, losses do not mean you automatically move down. So each week there's some great college basketball on. This week is, again, loaded. There's some rivalry games. Duke, North Carolina on Saturday, always must-watch television. But there's a couple of games that we will alert you to watch. Cade, what's your game of the week?
My game of the week is West Virginia at TCU, a Big 12 matchup. TCU, it's not a crazy record-moving game, but it just, adds wood to the fire for them to stay on the 5 seed line with their 15 net that they have. But for West Virginia, they're a bubble team with a 25 net and a quad 1 record of 4-8. So to me, that just shows that, they need a win on the road to give them a better resume to, have them be more safely in the bracket. They have no bad losses in the 7th hardest schedule in the country. Like I said, if they're able to pick up a quad 1 win on the road, I think that's a great resume builder.
This is an interesting game because you wouldn't pick it out of ESPN, but TCU lost one of its better players. I think he's out for a week or two. Can they hold serve without him? And I know the committee does look at injuries, but it's really important, as you said, for West Virginia. West Virginia is at the back end, and every win, every road win matters, and they might be getting TCU at the right time. For me, it's Indiana-Purdue. We're here in Indiana. Indiana's gotten back into the rankings. They're up to a 5 seed. Purdue is the best team in the country right now, seeding-wise. It'll be played at Assembly Hall. It'll be rocking. Everyone will be mad at each other in every office here in Indiana. It's what rivalry games are all about. And Indiana needs that. If they get that, they have a chance to move even higher. Purdue won't move one way or the other, but it'll be another feather in their cap. So tune into that rivalry game. But that'll do it for this episode of the Bracket Report. Thanks to ISC Sports Network and everyone here for hosting our show. Thanks to Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo for sponsoring us. And again, contact us on Twitter at Delphi Brackets. Follow our website, delphibracketology.com, for more. We have a live podcast, audio podcast on Thursday nights. But I'm Coach Brian Tonsoni, along with Cade Nelson. We thank you for watching. And until next week, may your favorite team win games, win quad 1 and 2 games, and get some wins on the road. Happy hoops watching.
Throw it up for Tillman.
Whoa, my goodness. 122-6-0 for Penn. What a swim. 6 of them.
Oh, baby, that got me awake.